Great. Thank you and welcome all to the OWASP April 2025 public board meeting. Let's start with roll call. I've got a handy list here, and as I call your name, please say here. Ashwini. Did I see her? I thought I did.
I'm here, Ricardo. Yes, I'm
okay.
here.
Great. Evie.
Here.
Diego.
Here.
Harold.
Here.
Sam.
Here.
Steve.
Here.
And Ricardo is here. Thank you and welcome all. Now we'll just have a quick reading of the conflict of interest statement. So as the board consists of individuals from many competing organizations, OWASP and its board shall abide by all applicable antitrust and competition laws to avoid any perceived or actual conflict of interest or antitrust concerns under U.S. federal, state, or regulations. Only the published agenda shall be discussed or voted upon or amended as below. If there are any conflicts of interest, board members are expected to disclose the conflict of interest and must recuse themselves from discussion and voting. So I hope that's clear. And then I'm gonna ask, are there any changes to the agenda that we need to consider? I know we have a few guests today, but I think if everyone's okay, if we could do the management stuff first, the management reports or financials first, that would be great. If we can, if there's someone that needs to go, let me know now, please.
Ricardo, I think we have chapters committee guests, right?
Yeah, they are the first
Kyle.
order of business.
And I think it's the first item on the agenda as well.
Yeah, so let's approve the minutes and then we'll get on to the first item of business.
Okay, that's fine. Just had to ask the question.
Mhm.
All right, so we'll have the approval of the previous board minutes. I will run down the same list to get a vote. Ashwini?
Yes, I just read through it and yes.
Evie?
Yes.
Diego?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
And I'm a yes myself, Ricardo. Great, the minutes are approved. Could you flip back to the current minutes? I mean, the current agenda for me, please. All right. Thank you. Would you mind making that a touch bigger? I'm on a laptop screen. Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you so very much. All right, so we have the chapter committee present. I don't know who's on that committee or who's presenting, but I assume that there's a presentation that's happening because that description looks a bit odd. We might want to clean that up.
Should be Kyle Smith.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So Kyle, welcome. As I understand, you might have a presentation for us.
I'm going to present the new committee charter. So let me
Perfect.
share that screen real quick. Share. Pull this up. This is the new chapter committee charter that we worked on with myself being the committee chair, and then with Garth Boyd, who's also on, and Edmund. Somebody escaped me his last name, but he's also one of the guys to use. Edmund Martin, who's also one of the committee members.
Great, welcome. Thank you.
So this is an updated committee charter, kind of reflecting the OWASP committee policy, which was the version 2.0 that we rewrote it against that one. So we were designed to address the following. Okay, first off, do you want me to read this to y'all, or do you want to just be able to go over different areas and talk about stuff? I'm not sure if anybody's actually looked at the committee charter or what other presentation I need to do on this.
I have not seen it myself, no.
Could you add it to the chat so we could actually make sure that it's in there the minutes.
Yeah, that's good point. If I can find Zoom here. Chat.
And Evie has his hand
What
raised.
is it?
You got a question, Evie?
Yeah, can I suggest instead of, reading through, I mean, we're all going to have to read through this and make comments afterwards. But can you just walk us through the highlights, more of the methodology, like what were you looking to change and what were you looking to solve, and focus on the big points out of it instead of reading through it.
Makes perfect sense. So really what I was looking on this is making sure we address what the chapter committee should be doing. So that's why I left the beginning part, make sure that we are helping chapter be successful. It's a challenging activity. We will make the chapter successful in their various activities. And of course, we're trying to address, you can see what we had for what their needs kind of there. They don't feel like they're sufficiently supported by OWASP. Okay, so they don't have a good guidance, good consistent guidance on how to do things as a chapter leader, because there's the old handbook out there that's like 2017. We've been working on the book. That's one of the things on our activities. So we're to give the people better ideas of how to run a chapter, how to start a chapter, how to do a chapter, and what they should be doing for that, and what we can potentially help them with on like escalations and other things of that nature. So our mission statement was modified too much. It's to be the main source of information support events for all OWASP chapters, enabling Thrive to contribute to OWASP. That's what we want to make sure the chapters are very well supported by not just the committee, but also what we can help to where they feel comfortable talking to other either current or former chapter leaders to where they're driving ahead with doing the correct thing, how against the OWASP policies. So obviously chapters are one of the pillars. We make sure that the chapters are well supported by OWASP Foundation, and we provide all the other back potentially do for them. And that's what our purpose is. We try to lay out the scope about what we're doing, encouraging different chapter activities by providing mentorship and guidance, like we said in the first line there. Sure, we help people with the life cycle, everywhere from starting to running to reinventing to even shutting down. Make sure everything is there for how they can do things for their chapter and how they can work with the foundation staff, which appropriate thing for a staff question or which one chapter can answer, and things like this. We want to maintain the chapter handbook. Obviously, we said the one that's out there on the website is from 2017, 2019, things like that. So it's a little aged and does have, it's not bad in some areas, but other areas need to be cleaned. And we've been working on a chapter handbook for, feels like a little bit long, correct, Sam, that we're getting these things updated, and Garth and Edmund and myself have been working pretty diligently on it. We'll probably have something hopefully by middle of next month in our next committee meeting. And we want to see encourage chapters. I mean, you see the scope here. We want to make sure the chapters are encouraged about how they feel like they know what they're doing and they can stay as a good, solid chapter. And also work with how the foundation staff needs to operate their operational processes in relation to chapters. See if there's something better that we can put into, or there's some questions on how some of these operational processes don't speak to a problem that the chapters are having, or their answer to a problem doesn't make sense to some folks, things like this. We're trying to make sure we're getting all those cleaned up and getting those optimized a little bit cleaner. That's kind of what scope here provides. And of course, the big one we provide is all the useful resources, which we may be slide deck, could be the chapter, the speaker bureau that we have, which has a list of speakers that are potential for people, which was great during COVID time. Now it's a little harder because people more in person, but it still works and people are willing to travel if necessary. But that's why we kind of provide all these different areas of support for the chapters. Let's see, the big one is we provide a first level dispute resolution for chapters. If they have a question about something that they can't find in the handbook, or they have not found on the leaders list, for example, we try to provide a first level, hey, maybe this is the answer that you're wanting. If there's some problem between chapters, they can bring it to the chapters committee at our monthly meeting, and we can address the issue there. And if not, there's always escalation paths. And of course, the last one there is advise the board and foundation. If we see a policy coming up, the chapters are very focused on how the chapters are working, and we will say, hey, this policy will affect the chapter in the chapter manner in this way. Not necessarily tweak, but just make sure that everybody's aware that that pillar needs to be satisfied too. And let's see, any organizational change affecting chapters. And per the leadership, this is what I just laid out. This is we're saying we have anybody can be in the chapters committee. It's just you have to be an OWASP member in good standing, and we have Pam as our current OWASP global board member. And we haven't done elections in probably a year and a half, so we're kind of doing a 2-year cycle. So I think probably the beginning of 2026 we'll do another kind of call out for elections, and I will hopefully step down. It seems to be the chapters we don't always have step down. Hopefully I will step down and somebody will be taking over this. But right now I am the chairperson. Edmund is the vice chair, and Garth, who is also on the call here, he's our secretary. And these are the minimum leaders we need, or the minimum officers we need per the committee chapter charter.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Would you mind?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I believe I read somewhere that the elections are supposed to take place every 2 years, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that it is 2 years. So I don't see it specified in this document. I thought it was a lot longer, but it's not. So I was able to speed read through it. So I'm gonna ask Sam if he would mind just looking that up, but I believe it's every 2 years. And it should be aligned with sort of like the board elections, right?
That
Which
is correct. It specifies that it should follow. It should follow the board cycle, but it does not have to. But it should be. It has to be every 2 years.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I would recommend is that we don't put in the individual charters things that are in the committee policy. So we only have to modify the committee's policy itself, which is up for review anyway. But yes, it would be easier for us if we could actually do it as part of getting people to vote once on multiple matters than to do multiple votes throughout the year.
And that's hopefully we'll be able to do that in the end of this year, and have new people around for the 2026-27 cycle. And the only reason I will say the only reason my mail says my name and Edmund and Garth is on here is because the committee charter information says we have to have our names in here. I really don't put those because that will change, and hopefully the charter won't. At the same point, that's why we have our unique names in here at the moment. Sorry, what was the question there?
Sorry, as long as we had interrupted around that, you specified that at least one global board member would be on the committee. Board members are actually banned from being on committees. So you have a liaison, but not actually as a committee member.
And yes, membership of the.
But that's
change that to where at least
yeah,
one
it's a minor correction.
Yeah, it's a minor correction.
As a board liaison.
I just wanted to mention it because we happen to stop there.
I'm not a committee member, board liaison.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. I can put and then whoops, I can't type and a liaison. That's something of that nature. That's pretty straightforward and easy to call out. We actually don't even have a listing. If you notice, we don't have a listing that a foundation member is a committee member because they cannot be, but they are all listed down below at the end of the officers. So we're talking about a foundation member, staff member will be the liaison for all committee activities. And Steve Hayden is our current person who is our liaison. He has been great about attending our meetings, and he's asking questions, going both directions with us, one thing. So it's all stuff. So he's good about providing updates to us, and he's also helping the operational activities down from the foundation side that affect the chapters, help us understand those.
Right.
And like, this is only a 2-page document. I keep it nice and short and understand the scope, allow a lot of the movement by the team to work.
Okay.
Any other additional questions?
Actually, Ashwini has her hand up, so, and then I have a question.
Yeah, so I was wondering how you would determine if the committee itself is successful, right? I mean, what's the criteria to say that we're doing a great job with what our intended objective is?
The objective is to support and provide different, if you notice the different scope activities within the charter itself, talking about obtaining and maintaining the chapter handbook, for example, having the useful resources, working with any chapters, anything that comes to our committee. That's kind of the success criteria we have. So obviously with the chapter handbook, we have not had a success yet on that. Hopefully we'll have one the next month or so, but those are kind of our success criteria and our scope that we're carving out what this chapter committee is.
So So I can say that the items on scope would translate into action items or some things that would define the success criteria, right? Is that what it would look like? So say over a given period of 6 months, how would I say what was that you achieved over a period of 6 months, right? So is it probably you're trying, the immediate thing that you're trying to achieve is it updating chapter resources, or what is that you're trying to do in the first,
We have
few
not
months?
laid out our criteria, our success criteria necessarily. I don't feel that's appropriate for a charter necessarily. That while that may be a good working thing for where we want to aim at our targets, that should be something that the committee itself should be delivering and crafting outside of the charter itself. Because as you put success criteria within a charter, that's a little too focused, I want to say. And that's very much, you have to understand, we're all volunteers. There's no, the chapter committee team is not receiving any perks or any additional benefits from this. We're all volunteers, so we do this as we can. And you have to keep that in mind for the success criteria and putting deadlines while we try to hit all the scope areas.
I'm not
That's what
talking
you
about
have to keep.
deadlines, right? We are specifically talking about being the point of escalation for chapter leaders and resolution of any conflicts. So yes, so anything around that becomes super important. So understanding probably the first level of flow or process on how these escalations would be handled and how would we define that, and tying that back to the objective, I think probably would give us a better idea about how we're doing in terms of helping the chapter leaders, right? And also the problem statement calls out that lack of escalation for chapter leaders, but what if there are internal conflicts in terms of chapter members and chapter leaders, right? So would we have any processes or workflows around those aspects and how we would want to resolve it as the first point of contact, right? So I think those are some gray areas we could consider and add it here, is what is my feedback, is what I think. Yeah.
That actually would be captured in the handbook itself. That is one of the activities within one of the sections within the handbook right now that we're still working through and making sure the workflow makes appropriate sense and meshes with both the policies and the foundation activities.
All right.
So
Okay.
yeah,
If that's really
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Sounds good.
No, makes perfect sense. That is definitely one of the things we want to make sure is captured in the handbook, because we want to make it clear, make people let people understand is that there's escalation or anything they need, we're here to help, or what kind of falls outside of our scope too, because there can be some tricky things that fall outside of our scope that we have either whistleblower or anything else like that that isn't necessarily a chapter committee response. But yes, that's going to be captured and try to be captured. Our best our purposes, we're going to capture it within the committee, the chapter handbook.
Sounds good.
Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
The main thing that I would like to make sure is in the updated committees policy that the relationship between staff and the various committees is enumerated correctly. Some committees, not the chapter committee, but some committees basically believe that the staff are there to be given work, and that's not the way it works. So the reality is that we're a liaison and we bring issues to the committee and vice versa, but we're not there to have additional bosses. So when we do the committee policy review, we just need to make sure. So I'm glad that this charter doesn't describe the relationship between the foundation and the chapter committee, because we really need to make sure that it's clear in the committee's policy itself, because that has been a point of contention in some of the committees. Lastly, Ricardo, what would be the process between now and getting this ratified? Is this something we bring to Barcelona for ratification, or is it something that requires community input, or is it something that could be voted on now?
That is a good question. That's actually one of the questions I was going to ask, and I think that I was going to see if this had gone to the public for its 30 days. Is this?
That's right. Yep. Similar
Yep.
to all the
Yeah.
other charters. Obviously, we recently reviewed the Educational and Training Committee charter as well.
Yeah, because if it has, then we definitely could vote on it in Barcelona.
Uh,
So yeah, has it gone to public yet, or is this something
Yes,
that
this
needs
was announced. This was announced on the leaders list.
Okay. Has there any feedback been received and questions
No.
answered? Okay.
No, actually, so
All right.
that's it.
So
Avi?
2 comments about the process. I kind of feel like when it goes public, not a complaint towards you guys, but for future, when it goes public, it should also be hit the board as well, because we don't always see it on the leaders list. Like you said, Ricardo, I hadn't seen this either, so
I haven't seen it as well, by the way. Yes.
yeah, I'm not sure that it doesn't make sense for us to do an initial review, see that it's aligned before hitting the community. Specifically, I have a big question about this charter for the board, actually.
mhm.
Our larger ongoing conversation regarding working groups, how does that change this? Because the way I'm seeing this, and just for Kyle and Gus edification, we're talking about the fact that committees are actually riding 2 horses right now. A tactical delegated approach from the board is what the committee should be doing, and then there's more of the functional tasks which should be spun up as working groups. And it does feel like we're doubling down on mixing and matching those in the charter, as has been always historically been the case. There's no complaint towards you guys. But coming back to the question on the board, with that in mind, assuming we are going to progress in that direction in some way, I see a lot of the scope here should fall under working groups and not under the committee charter. Thoughts to the
I was thinking the same too. The scope seems a little too broad for a committee.
I would tend to agree with that. My only thing is that I would expect the working groups to be more targeted though, right? More specific with whatever they need to be implementing or researching or doing whatever. And I imagine that the committees are more strategy implementation rather than actual going out there and effectively doing what the working group should be doing. So yeah, I think this is kind of broad. I did have another question, if you wouldn't mind scrolling up to the very top. There are 3 or 4 bullet points that you mentioned in the beginning. Yep, those are the ones right there.
Mhm.
And it said this chapter committee is designed to address the following. I kind of expected to see something in the charter that specifically addresses those 4 points. Like how, if they're mentioned, I would, just as a lay person just looking at it, I would expect some type of answer. So where is the answer with those 4 points? Like how is the charter and or the committee addressing those 4 points?
So operating successful OS chapter is challenging. That's what the handbook will address, some of the information how to run a chapter, hopefully make it less challenging, let people understand a little bit easier. Chapters don't feel sufficiently supported by OWASP. Once again, the handbook will have the escalation path, which is one we can do for that. It'll also spell out what the foundation will provide to the chapters. So it's like, how are they supporting it? Lack of guidance chapter leaders. Once again, we fall back to the policy, the handbook again. So it kind of does all the things fall really inside the handbook right now. We have ideas for other ones, like you said, working groups. Working groups are typically very specific activities. We would consider, like, truly the handbook might be a working group itself, and then they'd come back. But at the same point, we've also talked with Sam over time about training opportunities and available opportunities that we'd like to integrate into potentially onboarding. But at the same time, the committee needs a working group and spin those off and actually assign people with not necessarily deadlines, but at least activities and things like this. But a lot of these are all spoken to in somewhere within the handbook, and hopefully provided
that handbook for them. Is mentioned where within the charter?
Update and maintain the handbook.
Ah, okay.
And also things like this provide chapters with resources, which answers some of those questions or those challenges.
Would it make sense to be very specific and purposeful about what those 4 points are, how are they addressed within this charter, or am I reaching too far? Because it was easy with you explaining it, but I'm thinking of someone else reading this, they're not going to make that correlation.
Well, hopefully they would make the correlation that you see the problems we hear and we say, here's our scope to address those problems. That's kind of here's our purpose to address those problems that we've identified from previous, well, not just us, actually, this is a little bit of a continuation of the previous charter too. So we were looking at that and said, I believe this came from the previous charter, and we just kind of built onto it and tried to not necessarily narrow the scope, but just identify scope activities that we thought were still very appropriate for this committee. But if you want us to do a one-to-one thing, we can, but at the same point, it's really, most of the stuff is captured inside the chapter handbook in some form or fashion, or the resources. Sam has been great about creating the useful resources stuff when he was the committee chair.
Yeah. Maybe I'll have to read it when I have a little bit more time, but Avi has his hand up, and I think we might have to move to the next topic. We'll be on this one for quite a bit. Avi?
So first of all, something like the chapter handbook, that should definitely fit into those working groups, which we haven't fully actually defined. So there's no expectation that you should have rolled this in, Kyle. So that's kind of on us. So that's one thing. As far as the big goals up top, I feel like it is missing the tactical approach to support the strategy of growing our chapters vertically and horizontally, additional chapters and growing the existing chapters. And neither of those are actually here. On the other hand, staff has raised in the past, and Andrew can speak to this, about escalation should probably not be in the committee charter. My understanding of what Andrew said previously, I would tend to agree that perhaps escalation should not be there. Overall, my overarching point is really perhaps we need to stick a pin in this until we sort out how committees should properly function. Just so that you're not like spinning your cycles running in a direction that makes sense, but then we kind of change that strategically.
That's acceptable.
Anybody disagree with that?
No one? Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair enough then, Avi. I believe that it should be a point for our next in-person meeting next month for us to have some dedicated time to really discuss and think through this topic.
Kyle, did you understand my points of why I suggested putting this on ice for a moment? Just back burner it for a bit?
Yes, I think I do know that timing-wise, Barcelona might be a little bit more difficult with the Edmund, myself, and Garth are all US-based. And none of us, I don't think any of us are going to Barcelona. So it's going to be a little hard to have any discussions over there with us, put it that way. But yes, that's fine if you want to put it on ice till later.
Yeah. Is there any support that you need between now and when this gets sorted?
I do know we have another chapter committee meeting in May. So we're gonna, Hayden's gonna attend that, but otherwise, that was our next steps actually were kind of the chapter handbook, making sure that was ready for that one. But otherwise, no, I don't think there's anything off the top of my head. We have not had any real big discussions from anybody brought anything to the committee necessarily. I think we need to make that an awareness. That's one of the biggest things we might be able to do for this is that the chapter committee exists for any chapter people with questions. That's what we try to be here for. But thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Probably what I'd suggest is bringing, we've got Leah on the call as well, and it's already 1/2 the hour.
Yeah.
How about we do the finance report first, and then we'll do the management report next.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, Leah?
I was just rearranging my screens. Give me 1 second.
No worries.
So Star, one of the things that I'm going to be talking about in my executive update is working groups and the policy needed for that. So just hang in there.
Okay. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, first I want to apologize. I did send off the wrong management report, but I did send a new one this morning and Don forwarded it to you all. So my apologies on that. So first, I am going to go through the statement of financial position and just talk about your cash position. So in this month of March, cash increased by $290,000. There were minimal changes to your other assets. And the total assets increased by 295,000, leaving your ending net assets, ending assets balance of 3.5. Your liabilities solely consist of your accounts payable and your credit cards, which is a total of 39,000. Not much change from February. There's a big decrease, but that was due to paying off credit cards of 34,000. And your total overall net asset increased by $330,000. Moving along into the statement of activities, your revenue numbers were for the month of March $527,000, mostly due to project and sponsorship income. Expenses, like we pointed out earlier, the biggest expense change was in the personnel payroll, and that was primarily due to the rebate we received from Insperity. Once I get more insight on that 26,000, we'll have a little bit more clarity on the change in the payroll. Overall expenses were pretty much the same month over month. Leaving your change in net assets, 330,000. Going to your budget summary, year-to-date revenue, your revenue is exceeding your budget by 587,000. Again, that's mainly due to your project donations and your sponsorship income coming in sooner than anticipated. For expenses, your expenses were under year-to-date by 234,000, and that's primarily due to the timing of your conference expenses, like what we're paying for. If you haven't noticed, month over month, your uncategorized items have been going down drastically because we have been working on getting them cleaned up in preparation of the 2024 audit. So
great.
we're cleaning up a lot. So just to point out, your overall year-to-date net gain is 833,000. And does anyone have any questions before I move on to the cash flow forecast? Sorry, that was like so quick.
So just to let you know, the board has approved an additional hire, and we're going to be doing that hire most likely in the EU. But for the right candidate, we'll make it work. That will change our staffing forecast for the budget. I don't
Okay.
think it's material that we would need to recast the budget, but I just want to let you know that we're probably not going to hit our staffing budget number this year.
Okay, I will note that. Thank you. Any other comments or questions in regards to the management report? Okay, I will move over to your cash flow forecast. Again, you guys are always amazing. You are in a strong cash position. So your beginning cash balance for starting in April is 2 million, and ending balance of 2.2. Again, you're still in a great ending balance for the end of the year. You're on track. So it's not really much to say in regards to your cash flow. But I did also want to note, I have entered, which is how I created the cash flow forecast, the budget that was submitted. I still need the breakout for the projects, the updates for the projects. But other than that, we're good.
Okay. Is that something you're waiting upon me or staff
Yes,
or?
I
Okay.
need that from you.
Okay.
So I have a question. I don't know if you're going to bring it up next with the AR.
Mm-hmm.
I see that we still have what I feel is a significant balance over 90 days. I do see that it has dropped, but I'm wondering, you know, after you get after 91, like that age could be anything, right? So I'm wondering, given that much money is still being out there, if there's anything, and I guess this is partly for Andrew, is there anything being done to actively
Yes.
get that monies in?
Yeah.
There's
So
been emails going out to request the funds.
Okay.
yeah. And so Dawn's been doing a terrific job of collecting the AR. So if you go to the end of March, which is what I think Leah's just run,
Mm-hmm.
most of that has now been collected. So is Dawn on the call?
No, I don't see her name.
Okay, so if we did a report to today, can you just show today's over
Yes,
90?
I can.
Okay, it's gone up a bit.
There's some items in April that has not been tagged yet. So this is why.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's
Still
not
working through
cleared.
April.
Okay. But yeah, Dawn is currently doing the calls and making collections, and so she actually has done quite a bit of collecting,
Yeah.
which is in the management report.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Any
you
other
very much.
questions?
No?
Ooh, we have a quiet board today. I'm so excited.
I know.
This is my first one since last year. Like I presented last year in April, and this is my second time. So you guys are stuck with me now.
All
Everyone's
right.
in chocolate coma.
All right,
Very
thank
good.
you very much.
No
So
problem.
it's on to Andrew and the management report.
Okay. Let's go to slideshow. I'm on leave. I'm failing miserably at being on leave. But the reality is that I am trying to. There's basically 3 public holidays and in 6 days. So I'm trying to take 3 days of leave to make it into a break of a week. But there's a little bit too much happening, and it was a really unfortunate timing for CVD to fall down. And so there's some stuff on that. With the board strategy meeting, I owe Harold an apology. I ran out of time before going on leave to contact the people that we actually suggested for the funding committee. I'm going to reach out to them just after this board meeting and encourage them to help. Harold and I have identified 3 people that we feel that could be good officers for the funding committee, and hopefully they will agree. We really need the working groups policy. So when I get back, my first thing is to try to get that promulgated. Is there anyone who's been working on the working group policy? Because I think it needs writing, and therefore we may not be able to make Barcelona for an approval.
We looked at the working group policy as a group in Amsterdam and then made multiple edits. I'm not aware of any other edits that need to be made, nor are there any other outstanding comments in the document.
Okay, so if I push that out to the community for review, maybe we could get that approved for the Barcelona meeting. That'd be good. The other policy that I'm going to push forward is the travel policy, because we do actually have a number of project leaders who want to travel, and we need to make sure that we've got the policy in place before we start approving volunteer travel. We've been doing it under ad hoc policy forever. And I think, honestly, it's been very unclear to many folks. So I'll try to get that travel policy done. There was a lot of comments from the community that it was too US centric, which is fair because the policy actually comes from the staff handbook, which is a US document. And we do need to internationalize it and bring that up. So I'll try and get that done. Sam, I've given you all the videos, but do you have everything you need to summarize all of the action items that arose out of Amsterdam? Because what we really need to do is put them into something that we can track. There were so many great.
Monday.com, probably, yes. I haven't checked all the recordings yet, but I will check and I'll get in touch with you, Andrew, if I'm still missing something. I also had some audio recordings because if you recall, one of the sessions we started video recording quite late. But
Yeah.
I do have an audio recording that I can go back to.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, because there is that day that we missed the first two sessions through forgetting to press the record button. So I'm glad you recorded it. I started to try to pull it apart. I have the MP4 files, the audio files, also the M4A files or whatever, and shoving those through Microsoft Word to provide a transcript. Is that actually helpful?
It is.
Okay, I'll continue to try and do.
And please
break that
publish
apart.
on the Google Drive once it's ready. So I will.
So CVD, CVE, CWE. Star has been working behind the scenes and had a very interesting meeting with one of the OpenSSF folks. And I think there's going to be some sort of a joint announcement. Star, can you just inform the board?
Yeah, I need your headshot and bio as well as Steve Springett's, but I can share to the group the viewing link for the document. But it is a community-driven statement that really is springboarding from Steve's blog post. And it's very in sync with that, but it's showing disparate organizations can come together and work together to solve. And we're hoping to make a joint statement, and it's been very well received across industry, at least in terms of personal connections that it's been shared with. So people ranging from like Jim Manico to Jason Haddix to there's a whole list of each Prob from OpenSSF and I went and approached it and shared it pretty widely. And this is the final output of that. I think. You have a question?
Question on the press release. I believe there should have been a press release on the blog post as well. But I am not seeing it on a list of press releases. We have the
it was on Access Wire. I'm not sure.
According to Nancy, it was picked up by 233 news organizations, but no big ones. My biggest concern is that when you actually search for press releases, you don't find them.
Right.
But we've actually had a number of stories published. I will ask Nancy why we're using Access Wire rather than PR Newswire or one of the other ones that's a bit more
tech focused.
Yeah. So, but it has been published. It's just, I don't think it's had the reach. This is one of the reasons why I think press releases often fall flat, is maybe the choice of the press wire or the actual agency they're using.
We always have an option of engaging with the Gen AI's team. If Sam is mentioning he found their press release, maybe simply what they do already is a good transition to consider if we want to continue valuing press releases.
We discussed this in Amsterdam as well, and while press releases are valuable, they do need to be available in Google search. If you can't find it in Google, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
No matter how many news outlets pick it up. If you can't Google find it, it's nowhere. But we also discussed in Amsterdam the need to augment press releases with maintaining relationships with journalists who can work with the foundation, not only pick up the story, but put their own spin on it and amplify it in different ways. And I believe the position that Andrew was discussing earlier would be part of that person's responsibility.
One of the things that I've been putting together is a press list just based on my own personal exposure to news online and just collecting information, who's a good journalist, and having somewhere to send our news. And this was intended for that audience. That's my goal, where we're sharing the stuff.
No, that's great.
Okay. So talking about the marketing hire, I'm putting together the job rec for that. I need to work with Insperity to make sure that it's actually a legal job rec, because there are certain things that you need to be able to state in the job hire. You can't just sort of say looking for someone. There needs to be, even though I'm going to be probably employing them through deal, I just want to make sure that we're not breaching any sort of by missing out on certain things. So I'll get that done as soon as I'm back. The EU entity, there's a meeting on May 6th to sign the actual documents. There is some movements that I'm seeing in Slack. I will follow those up. Hopefully we can have the new EU entity up and running by Barcelona, and that'll be really good. The Spanish VAT, they are asking for a apostilled version of my passport, which is a notarized version of it. Apostilling in Australia is not a thing, and so we're going to have, we need to figure out what they will accept, because I can get it notarized, absolutely no problems, but to get it apostilled, the Belgian government is really weird. We'll see. The website update, we are in the process of getting a statement of work from our preferred bidder. Once we've got that, I'll share it with Harold, because obviously it's over my approval limit, even though we've budgeted for it. At the end of the day, basically, I just want to make sure it's good value for the organization and that it actually achieves what we actually set out to do. But once we've got that approval, I want to move fast on it. I want to dedicate much of my time in May to producing the content that the website rejuvenation needs. I do appreciate Ricardo and a couple of others providing some feedback on like what the corporate page should look like. I'd rather invest that into the new website and get that up earlier than to try to fix our current website. Our current website it is what it is. Let's get the structure right and the content right and the new website and invest our time there. I want to bring forward some work that Star's been doing in the projects area.
Okay.
Let me just. Okay, so Star, do you just want to run through that real quick?
Yeah, so I have been in the process of retiring stale repos just off of the criteria that was shared with the community, I think a month and a half ago. The next phase of that is going to be the most meaningful, I think, to go through and identify what we need to do to stand up the VDP for the CRA. You know, it's a lot of acronyms. Are we all good with those? Okay. So
yeah.
it's just, you know, years and years and years of a lot of great contributions that now have reached a point of age, and we just need to get leaner in what we're offering and more intentional.
Yeah. So just to give people an idea, essentially, we're going to be open source steward for all these projects. Some of the projects aren't maintained, and if we get notified, as we talked about in Amsterdam, there's a difference between being dead and done. These are dead. Okay, so we're not archiving done.
No, and it's funny, the two that pushed back were quite literally in that category of done. Oops, I missed your original 3 messages about this topic. Can you please give it back? And it was a very simple reinstatement. And then I asked them to add something to it. So my automated sweep of date ranges and such for updates would just not pick it up yet.
Yeah. So one thing just before I went on leave, I found through an interestingly enough a Linux Foundation video on Project Health, and we're going to be looking into that. It looks like they're solving exactly the same problem that we're solving, and so that may be a common approach that we could adopt. Star, do you want to talk about the CRA?
I mean, I feel like we kind of did. I'm on a crash course of learning the intricacies of legislation. But it seems pretty straightforward. Honestly, we could take an approach that says, well, we're kind of not this, but really we're going to go all in on being a steward and correctly following the CRA so that we can maintain good standing and just good practices. But I think I just covered the bulk of the slide.
Yeah. So one of the things that when I get back, I do want to work on the policy that the CRA requires, so that we have a framework for developing secure projects at OWASP. One of the problems is that we do actually have projects that are designed to be insecure. So we need to carve that out in the policy so that we're actually very specific about these projects over here, like AMAS and whatnot. They're designed to be secure, but whatever. And then there's these projects like Juice Shop and WebGoat that are designed to be insecure, and that's fine too. So that policy does need to be developed.
And I think there's still a question in terms of there's still some areas that can be defined in terms of open source stewardship, particularly around the point you just made, Andrew. So they still don't have an answer for what to do in that situation. So I think presenting them with something like a carve out would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So there's been some housekeeping as well, some additional shared resources, and just want to talk briefly about the town halls. So Star, you want to talk about the town halls?
Yeah, so we're kicking this off on Friday, and really the first 2 sessions, which are the same session but for 2 different time zones, will be to understand what the community wants out of the session and to really set an agenda that we can work through and a process for establishing each month's agenda. Like some of the things I don't know until I know how many people show up and how wide it gets. You know, if I'm talking to 10 people, it's a very different meeting than 100 people. So we're going to try it out and then learn from that. But the goal really is to get more in touch more regularly with project leaders, to hear them and to let them know that we care to hear them, and then make things actionable, and then hopefully take a collection of feedback from both groups and see if we can, you know, better make joint progress forward.
Yeah. So Ashwini, just to highlight, the idea is that one of the most common requests that we have from project leaders is the ability to do AWS. A single root account gives us the ability to control billing and get AWS credits spread across the entire organization. At the moment, that's not true. We want to make sure all AWS root accounts are properly secured. It's not a single point of failure. It's literally the best way to manage the organization. It's the same as having a OWASP organization on GitHub. It is nothing different. It's literally people aren't using the root account on a day-to-day basis. It's an administrative way of actually making sure that if people are using AWS and we have a problem, we could actually make sure that we can help them resolve that or shut down a VPC or whatever the case may be. We have that little bit of extra control. But we also want to make sure that, you know, if we're asking AWS for a huge grant, that everybody could benefit. And we can't do that if we don't have a single root account.
Well, and to that point, we do have a root account. It's just nothing is nested under it. And right now I'm completely blind with every effort I've put out there to say, hey, do you utilize AWS for your project? I know of 3, and I know that's not a true statement. So we need to figure out which I need to transition those accounts, and I can't do that until I identify them.
I
So
think
that's again, that's an agenda item for the town halls.
yeah, I think one of the things to likely consider, Star, would be, what is the balance between having the having the ability to administer the accounts while simultaneously controlling the blast radius should one of those accounts be compromised.
Sure. I think the thing that we're really trying to capture is some shared services from AWS, and their way of doing that is through the root account method. So I can appreciate and will welcome any feedback regarding how to actually accomplish your suggestions, Steve. But at the same time, in order to not pay for it, we have to do the thing that Amazon is insisting we have to do, which is tell them all of the sub accounts to roll up into the one root.
Okay. And with that, I think we'll there is some more stuff around events. At the end of the day, just trying to I want to bring to your attention that the reality is that we do need to market the US event to US attendees. There is a lot of reductions in travel. Germany, 30% less, Australia, 7% less. We've already had some cancellations of some speakers and some project track people. We absolutely do need to make sure that we fill the available capacity and not rely upon international traffic for AppSec USA. It's a very unpredictable environment, to put it mildly. So we need to plan for the unpredictability by basically saying people who aren't going to get caught up by it are likely to be able to attend. So we're going to be marketing AppSec USA primarily to the American audience, and hopefully we'll get a full house. We're doing quite well for where we're at for AppSec EU. So, it's obviously less than a month away. We're going to keep an eye on this and just make sure that we're actually doing okay. And just, I saw something. Kelly actually had an update on the sponsorships. So AppSec EU is fully sold. Global AppSec US silver is sold out, but we still have gold and we still have diamond. So if you do know anybody who wants to be at AppSec USA, we do still have room. So please
Andrew,
reach out to
I'm sorry to interrupt. We do have startups available for AppSec EU, which they're the same exact size as the silver. So if we've got a company that doesn't meet our startup requirements, I'm willing to switch a startup booth to a silver booth to get some more income here and to accommodate the company. They're all located in the same room. It's just, like I said, there's a couple benefits that are different and the price. But we do have startups if anybody is interested for that.
Yeah. Okay. So we're doing okay for AppSec EU, but please do reach out to people. Avi, I know that Israel is a very big startup community. If you could get your Rolodex out and see if anybody wants to join us in Barcelona, that'd be awesome. Okay, and with that, I will hand back to Ricardo.
All right. It's 2:00 and I see we have a few items on here. We have a new business, the discussion on videography and photography at AppSec EU. I don't know who brought forth this item. Does anyone know who wanted to discuss this one?
I believe it was him.
Oh, okay. Sam, do you want to kick us off on this discussion?
Yes. So the discussion point here is about videography and photography. For all the global AppSec events. I think
Mhm.
we are we have a bit of a problem with this at Barcelona because we try to get Cooper, who is usually videographing our events. Unfortunately, he's unavailable. And I really don't want us to be in the situation where we have a global AppSec conference. I think for the first time in the past 13 years that I've been attending Global AppSec EU, if we're going to be left without any video recordings, that's going to be quite difficult. So there are various options. One of the very useful proposal came from Star, who suggested to do a call for volunteers similar to a call for papers and call for trainers, which I think is quite a good idea, and see if the board is in support of that. See if we can get any volunteers who will be ready to travel to Barcelona and record all the talks. So it would be also. Andrew and Lauren, do you have any updates on Barcelona? I think we have 0 recordings at the moment, right? There's absolutely nothing.
The keynote.
Only keynotes, but we only have 2 keynotes, right? So these are the only 2 things which will be recorded.
Yeah, so the AV bill, for the number of views that we get, it just wasn't worth it. So one of the things that you suggested in Amsterdam is that we ask the individual trainers to record their own sessions and provide them to us, and we'll reach out to them and see if we can get that happening.
That's correct.
Yeah. Some of them, the audio will be a bit iffy if people walk around the stage is the only thing, because they're not going to have access to the microphone. So yeah, start.
I guess knowing what the AV bill was looking like, is there not like an in-between solution, or are we bound by union?
It's not union in this case. It was just
So
simply
why don't we just fly somebody there to do it, or get somebody local to do it for a fraction of the price?
at the very moment, it's probably just simply too late to actually have someone at this stage. If we'd had the ability to get someone in and planned.
Trop bien. Trop bien, trop bien. Écoute, merci pour ça. Merci d'avoir pris le temps, Guilain.
Sorry,
I have several video teams if it would be useful to you. And I just I know them. I already got one for Atlanta. And if I can offer them to you, the cost of a flight plus hotel would probably be way less than what that number was from but
okay.
I'll stop metal.
And I would also suggest to put that call for volunteers on Slack as well in OWASP community. I know there are people who are audio video enthusiasts in our community, so there could be local people, not necessarily in Barcelona and Spain, but in neighboring European countries, who are probably going to be driving to the event anyway and can bring the equipment with them if necessary. And obviously, another option was my proposal, the way how we do the recordings of the in-person events is to use Zoom, using the leader Zoom account. I'm pretty sure we can probably allocate Zoom account to each track, Andrew, and basically ask the presenters, instead of sharing the screen directly on the laptop connected to the big screen, is to connect to the Zoom conference first and then share the screen on Zoom and have one of the laptops. I'm ready to volunteer my laptop to have Zoom to host that Zoom account, so at least we have the Zoom recordings of all the sessions as a backup.
I have 2 small quibbles. Andrew, you mentioned about the trainers recording their trainings. Typically, the trainings are not recorded.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the speakers, the actual public talks.
I thought you said
at the end of the day, I'm going to follow up with Star and Lauren and see what we can do. At the end of the day, basically, it's quite late for AppSec EU. In DC, we might be more constrained. So just letting the staff know, there is a taste for doing hybrid sessions. We should probably plan for that in 2026 and see what we can do about doing hybrid ticket sales to fund the video recording. So I'll take that up again with Lauren when I get back.
And then, Andrew, a question for the Global AppSec USA. Is that a union property, the Marriott Marquis?
I believe so. Just hang on. Lauren, is that the case?
No, it's not union there.
Okay.
So we can have an external team of volunteers that Star suggested, for example, to fly in from Atlanta to DC to do the recording, if that's an option.
Yes, I'd like to do a cost analysis of what that would look like because we've worked out a really good deal with our AV partner to where our recordings are not as costly in the US. I kind of feel like we've gotten a really good deal between having Cooper and the EU and then our AV partner here. But of course, if we can get it cheaper, that's something definitely worth looking into.
And Andrew, you were going to look into taking some legal advice to make sure that folks that are coming and doing various activities there are set, right?
I've already actually reached out to the lawyer. I instructed her last week, and I'm expecting to have a statement of work that I can sign, an engagement letter that I can sign upon my return.
Okay, great. Okay. I think we have some action items from there. So I'm feeling comfortable that we can move on unless anyone has any follow-up questions there, which I doubt. Okay. Let's move on to the next one because actually we have a couple more to go here. It's a discussion on establishing a funding committee. I'm happy to kick us off on this one. I know we discussed this in Amsterdam. Since then, I've had a conversation with an individual of a nonprofit to gain some clarity around how they go about doing their fundraising. And they actually use an external firm to develop their strategy. And this is an international firm dedicated to the North American and European markets, but they've since expanded worldwide. I offered that up to Andrew, suggesting that he have a conversation with them. I don't think it will hurt to see if they can add any value, but I do like the fact that they come with the knowledge and experience of dealing with other nonprofits to engage a strategy for getting money into these organizations. So I'm Andrew, when you're back in the office, please reach out to them. And if you don't like them, let's see if we can maybe find another firm and have a discussion. Because I like the fact that these are people who are experienced with nonprofits and get money in, and I think that's foundational for us, right? Everything that we do is a foundation of rooted in some type of funding. So I think it's vitally important that we get it right out the gate rather than a potential to fumble the ball, so to speak. Sorry, you were going to say something?
No, I mean, I had discussed the fundraising committee with Harold. We've identified 3 individuals that we feel that would be good initial volunteers. And I think our first step is to get the committee up and running. And then some of these other things, such as identifying potential sources of funding, which comes back to that strategy we're just talking about. I'll reach out to them next Monday when I get back.
Okay, great.
Yeah. The reality is that we are already receiving significant project funding. And so we actually do have a problem where some folks are reaching out to be funded without any sources of income. We had one significant request recently, but at the end of the day, we need that particular project's going to have to go on hold until CVE is worked out because it's related to CVE.
Got you.
But yeah, there was a request for a certain amount of money, and normally we would ask them to try to do some fundraising. This is a very easy conversation to have. But if given the choice between standing up something that stands up CVE for the world or funding some work for CVE when it's not going to be very clear about the future of CVE, we're going to have to put that one on pause, and that's what we've done. So I think honestly, the funding committee needs to think about both income and outgoing funding.
Yeah. I also see them spawning out maybe a few working groups to target specific sources of income and or like you said, what's going in and what's going out. So there might be multiple working groups within there, but yeah, I don't know what any of the other directors think, but I would like to get this one up going really quickly. And I don't see a reason to hold back on this one. Whatever we can do to accelerate it, I'm all for it. I'm totally 120% support.
Yeah. So one of those challenges for us is to get a P&L for financial transparency for the projects that are doing this. Projects are not the only folks who need this level of tracking, but they're the ones who mostly use it. We've had a small price rise from Charity CFO to be able to help us do this additional tracking. We don't want to get to a situation where we had 700 accounts on the books like we had prior to 2020. But we do need when we're receiving more than about $10,000 for a project, they need their own P&L.
All right. Anyone else have any comments, suggestions, concerns on the funding committee? If not, we can move on. Okay, great. And we'll go to the reviewing the working group policy. Is this something we're going to bring on the screen or is it just a discussion?
I'm going to give Steve co-hosting rights so he can share.
Oh, perfect.
And stop share.
Very good. Hold on a second. All right.
And
All right,
Steve,
so
if you could actually share the link to this so we could actually put into the minutes, that'd be awesome.
absolutely.
Thank you.
There you go. All right, so yeah, this is the working group policy that we reviewed in Amsterdam. We've collectively have gone through this document, made a lot of corrections from what it stated originally. One of the big things in here is switching to just chair and up to 2 co-chairs. Really the gist of this is that in terms of leadership, they have to be OWASP members. So the chairs have to be OWASP members, but participation to OWASP, legacy is open to anybody with an interest. Members, non-members, whomever is interested in the subject should be able to participate. I don't want to go through the entirety of this document. We've all seen it before. At the current moment, this is a leftover comment because of the confusion between working groups and committees. But at the current moment, there are no additional comments to this document, which indicates to me that it's likely ready for community review.
Okay.
Yes, Steve, my only unresolved comment there is to define the relationship a bit clearer between the working groups and the working groups which are spun off by chapters.
Should that be in the working group policy though? I don't know if it should be in the policy.
I think so, because then it will conflict with the chapter policy. Because chapter policy at the moment says the chapter policy can spin off working groups, and then we have another working group policy. Just to state that these are two different things, but could be the same thing.
So I don't know if I'm following that.
No, so we add in the chapter policy at the moment, we say that the in the committee policy, we say the committees can spin such as chapter committee, project committee, can spin off their own working groups.
Yes.
As part of the committee, right?
Yeah, but
but
this constrains the working groups, right? This,
of course, that's why we have this.
Right.
But then what is missing here is when they say they complemented the committees. But we're relying. We need to basically state the governance. I think we clarify the governance here, Steve.
So we're saying here that there isn't a constraint on who can form a working group. The other document that you're referring to actually has that constraint, but it's specific to that committee. The working group policy, because anybody can form a working group, whether you're in a committee or not. I mean, we could clarify it by saying anyone can propose a working group. But I don't want to specifically call out the committees, because then we have to call out everybody else too, including the entire community.
Yeah, I see where Steve's coming from. We really want a lightweight thing that we can spin up and spin down with a lot of overhead and red tape. Is there a specific issue here, Sam, that needs to be called out? Because I'm just worried that if we're going to spin up a working group that's only going to last like 3 or 4 weeks while it does a particular job, we don't really want to have a huge amount of overhead.
So
yeah, I think this is what I'm trying to confirm with the bylaws, right? Because basically things like committees are defined in the bylaws because they're member committees. Because there's an additional constraint that they need to be set up by members, and the officers need to be members.
But we're not giving, the reason why we made them members for committees is so that they could actually end up having board powers in the committees. Working groups aren't designed to have board powers.
A good suggestion from Harold. So Harold is saying committee policy should just link to the working group policy once it is established.
Yeah, there you go. That would be a really easy fix, I think.
Yeah,
it would avoid the confusion, I think, that Sam is pointing out, which does exist. But yeah.
So I actually want to counter that with the committee's policy needs to be rewritten to align with the working group policy anyway.
It does.
So having these as two, and it's not a small fix that we're talking about. So having these as two kind of parallel policies, treating, I feel like it's more natural for them to be together as two parts of the same coin, because right now we're basically slicing this off the existing committees. And to the point of we want these to be lightweight if they're shorter. If the committee wants to spin up a working group, it still needs to go through a lot of overhead here. Still needs to get Andrew's approval, scope and program, whereas perhaps a committee or the board should be able to just spin it off by themselves without the overhead.
Just so I'm clear though, right? We don't need a committee to have a working group, right?
No.
So then I don't see how that should be a same parts of a coin then. That alignment is much too close. If a working committee can just exist without something else, then it's its own entity and needs its own governance, i.e. this document.
It can be, but it can also be spun off from a committee.
Yes, that's not a problem. However,
my point is,
I think what we're trying to do here is to provide governance over that entity, which is the working group. So if it's spun off a committee, if it's made up from the board or comes from staff, that thing needs some type of policy around it, some type of governance, so that it can be constrained and or managed by, you know, either the ED or whomever else needs to do that, right? Does that make sense?
Ricardo, if a committee is spinning up a working group, then it's
Yeah.
already has the governance of the committee, which is quite a lot more. So why would we need, so in those working groups, should they still have all the additional governance and overhead of an independent working group?
The rights from the committee do not flow down to the working group.
Yeah, I don't know how
That doesn't operate
those
that
two
way.
things. That's my problem, I guess, here. I don't know how you're aligning those two things together.
Because a committee spins off a working group doesn't mean that they inherit the board authority that we had granted that committee. No.
My point is, in those cases where there's already that governance and and stuff, perhaps it doesn't need the additional overhead of a program and approval from ED or not. If there's no consensus on what I'm saying, then it doesn't matter.
We need an approval process of some description, and I'm here all the time. To me, this is like I can approve something quickly. If you wait for
My point is, if the committee is doing it, I'm claiming that it doesn't need an approval process if the committee is doing it.
Well, I think having a
Alright.
central place, I think makes a lot of sense. For example, you know, we've been wanting a project handbook to be updated for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. It would be conceivable that a working group could, in fact, be established outside of the project committee to actually just get it done. It could also be conceivable that you might have a race condition where both the project committee and the community both want to stand up a working group to get that project handbook done. So I think having a central place for Andrew to kind of funnel those approvals through, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's not a hard job for us to do this. It's as far as I'm concerned, working groups have a limited lifespan. They're not designed to be stood up forever. But I can see a lot of working groups being stood up, and I just want to make sure that, you know, we can keep tabs on who's doing them and stuff. So I want to have a JIRA ticket for this. So it'd just be a very simple process. Apply for a working group, I review them, and you've got a 3-day SLA. It's really, I think honestly, it's the least bureaucratic version of what we need to do.
Okay. So where are we with your concerns, Evie? Does that feedback answer that, or do you still have issue with?
It addresses it. It doesn't answer it because I disagree, but I'm the minority, so that's okay.
Okay, so what I'd suggest is I can copy this and put it up as a draft policy, and you can provide comments, and the policy review group can start to address some of these comments. I think that's probably the way forward. I don't see there's much point in waiting for the community not to see this document and because if we want to approve it by Barcelona, it sort of needs to go public this week.
Yeah.
It does, and I think we've got the SBOM forum right now, which is led by Tom Ulrich. That OWASP project likely could be converted to a working group in the future, because that's essentially what it is. And then, in a more timely kind of fashion, all the CVE conversations that are happening, we also need to stand up a working group for that. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does it make sense to publish this policy while the committee policy still exists as it is, which would be in conflict with us, as opposed to fixing that up and publishing them both together?
Well, I think in my opinion, the committee policy is going to take a lot more work, as you said. It's not going to be ready in a month, probably not even 2 months.
But if we were to hypothetically approve this policy, we would have existing approved policies that are in conflict with each other.
Is
This
it possible to?
policy as it stands and this policy are quite in conflict, is my point.
Could we deprecate the other one?
Yeah, we're not planning on forming any new committees except for the finance fundraising committee. If we get the leaders for the fundraising committee, we could probably get that through, and then deprecate the actual committee policy whilst it gets. So the order of votes in Barcelona would probably be stand up the committee, deprecate the committee policy, approve the working group policy. Therefore, we don't have policies in conflict, or we could potentially just do a little carve out of the committee's policy to highlight that where the two policies are in conflict, the working group policy is to be take precedence. That's another way of just putting a caveat down the bottom of it.
That makes a lot more sense, because if we deprecate the committee's policy, we won't have a committee's policy under which the committees are not being governed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Okay.
committees are defined in the bylaws. This is my major concern, right? Because committees are defined in the bylaws, and the working groups are defined in the bylaws as subgroups of committees only. So this is my concern, whether we need to amend the bylaws, which I believe is quite a long legal process, and how can we do this in a shorter, well, in a better and faster way, basically.
The bylaws can now be modified by a 2/3 majority. And the only thing is I would really want us to get some legal advice just to make sure that the modifications are as small as possible to remove the restriction that committees are the only people standing up working groups. But it just requires a 2/3 majority now. I just want to make sure that we're not breaking the bylaws. And I don't think that would be costly. I don't think it'd take long. It'd just be a little bit of advice once we've got the wording.
Okay. And anyone opposed to Andrew starting that work now? Getting that advice? No opposals. So
No, if we can get the bylaws sorted out,
Yep.
that would be great.
that'd be great.
And define working groups in there and say these are separate from the working groups or subgroups spun off by the committees.
Yeah.
And then going with the order of procedure that Andrew stated in Barcelona, so that we align that committee policy to the working group policy coming online. So
yeah,
I'm happy for all of that happening. Great.
Okay. So Steve, I will put this up as a draft policy for public review after the meeting, and get that out to the community so they've got a chance to review it.
Very good. Awesome.
Thank you.
Perfect. Can we move on to the next item? I'm sorry, I probably have to go in like 15 minutes. I actually have to physically be in another location, and it might take me a bit to get there. So if we could just start our conversation or the discussion on the EU entity. Andrew, I know
I've already done it.
You've already done it? Okay.
Yeah.
Just one question I'd like to know. When can this board see some documentation and structure? You still have not shared that with us, and I'm a bit concerned that we're approaching that May 6th deadline and we haven't seen anything yet.
Sure, that's my bad. I will get that to you straight after this meeting. We do have the Constitution. It's a translation of the French document, but it is, from what I can see, reasonably robust translation. So hopefully that'll give you the information you need.
All right.
Okay.
Anyone else, questions, concerns before we move on to the next item? No? Okay. So this is a motion to change the May board meeting. So what I'll do is I'll just read the motion. Sorry, yep. So resolve that the May board meeting be moved to May 28th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Central Daylight European Time. Let me get up my voting stuff here. Did someone just drop off? Is Evie still around? Huh.
I think Avi.
He might have dropped off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's right.
okay.
Let me ping him.
We still have enough.
Oh, Avi just pinged, said his internet dropped. Yeah, so he's will
Oh
be back.
no. Okay. So,
Okay,
Evie,
he's coming back.
are you still able to vote or no?
Yeah,
Is it-
yeah, you've got quorum.
Okay.
He's also rejoining.
Okay. So I will do the same order as I did before. Ashwini,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
I was on mute.
No problem. Evie,
I'm sorry, my internet just dropped as you were reading that. What are we voting on?
no problem. Oh, changing the May board meeting.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Then yes.
Yes, okay. Great. Diego,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and Ricardo is a yes from myself. Great. Thank you very much all. Minimize this. And that brings us to any other business. Is there any other business before we adjourn today? Comments, announcements, anything like that?
I think we have quite a lot of motions lined up for Barcelona. Ricardo, I'll work with you to see that we make sure that the agenda is including all the approvals and motions. And also one thing to check if we need to have another closed session for any outstanding items. Probably scheduled for Barcelona as well.
Yeah. I didn't think we had any closed door items today, unless someone has something of some urgency that they want to bring up. I literally probably need to go. Yeah.
So, Avi, I agreed to provide the constitution to the board. I'll do that straight after this meeting. What I'd suggest is that we hold a discussion on the global board list with any concerns, because we've got till May 6th to get the French fixed and then the translation updated.
Aces, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Cool. All right. So the next general board meeting will be May 28th at 5:30. Is that a mistake? I thought it was 5 p.m. It says 5 p.m. up there and
That's
5:30.
5:30. I confirmed it with Lauren. It's 5:30.
It's 5:30. Okay. So it'll be 5:30 Central European summertime. So it is moved and seconded to adjourn. Those in favor say aye.
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 Actually, who seconded that?
I'll
Sorry.
second that.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Just for the record. Thanks all. Take care.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.